Dr. Allison Bremner here with Cultivating Success, and I have Dr. Rigney today, Elise Rigney in Fort Collins. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this because we're going to talk about my favorite subject, which is helping associates figure out what office to be in and how to prepare now in school. And, I think it's an important topic because I feel like students are super lost. Doc, do you feel that you get a lot of that? People just like very lost out of school trying to figure out what they're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the challenge too is you go from being a student for so many years and you're in this like student role, student hat, student brain. And then all of a sudden it's like 1 minute later you're a doctor and it's like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
it's a big transition.
Yeah, and Dr. Elise has 2 clinics and 5 associates. So we're going to pick her brain today and figuring out, like, if you are a student and you want to be an associate, some things that you can do. Doc, tell us a little bit about your story, if you will. Like, you came out of school. When did you graduate?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2011. I went to Northwestern. Before I got to chiro school, though, I was a CA. So that really helped me with like just knowing I wanted to own my own business. And then I worked for 15 different chiropractors around the Twin Cities area and did their marketing and screening at like huge expos throughout chiro school. So yeah, I graduated 2011 and then I went and worked at the time it was the largest chiro office in the world. We saw like it was crazy volume, like 2,800 a week there. I was there for about 6 months and then left and opened up my own office.
Nice. I bet you, probably saw a lot of people in your first 6 months.
Well, what was crazy is I didn't really even adjust. So I was like an exam doctor. And
Oh,
so so like the owner was the main one to adjust. It was very quick, like 18-second adjustments. It was one of those models where like sometimes you need to see the ceiling to know like, okay, that's what that looks like. And now what do I want my care to look like for my future clinic? So great experience, but I don't practice the same.
yeah. Well, I talk to a lot of students and I tell them, shadow as many docs as possible. And what you're going to find typically is what you don't like. I mean, it's just going to be like, it's very obvious. Oh, I don't want to do that. But I see how you're doing it. And you kind of compile things over the years, the more people that you shadow, picking up these things that you're like, absolutely not. And then, oh, maybe I think I'd be interested in doing that. And it's so interesting to see the different types of practices out there.
I agree. And I think it's great. Like you said, shadow as many as you can and think about yourself. Like, does this align with me? Does this align with my, like, even core values? And even this might sound weird, but like, do I think I'd have longevity in this technique or this, I remember shadowing docs who I thought it was so cool. They did like this neuro work, but it was an hour-long appointment. They're on the floor with the patient. And I was like, I don't know. Like I want to see more people than that. Like, once you have one patient an hour, that's a capacity. Like there's a certain amount of people you can help with that amount of time because you're one person. So I think having those thoughts in your head when you're a student and you're going and shadowing, like, do you really like babies? Or are you thinking you want to see babies because your mentor did, or the office that you interned or peaked in did? It's like really checking in with yourself instead of just looking at what your mentors do too. Obviously, your mentors are amazing guides when you get out into the real world. But yeah, I think there's a lot of great questions that can be checked with innately when you're a student.
Definitely. And I love that, like figuring out what you actually want. I think a lot of students, they'll hear something on stage and they'll be like, okay, I'll do that. And yes. I love that you picked out children and babies. As a female doc, I don't see kids. And well, I see some kids, but very rarely. And I kind of get a little grief from it because they're like, why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't mean I don't think that there should be a ton of options in pediatric offices for people, obviously, but like, I personally don't want to do that. And I will talk to students and they're like kind of like whispering like, oh, I don't want to do that either. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, figure out what you want to do.
That is fine. I'm the same with Medicare elderly patients. It's like those sweet people need care, but my patients and also like my adjustments are, I don't want to break a rib on anyone. So I would rather them go to someone who has a more gentle technique or one that's more fit for their demographic and their health. So yeah, it's like, we shouldn't feel guilty. We should just get really good in the area that fuels us.
Yeah, definitely. And like knowing yourself and knowing what makes you happy is super important, because I think you're in school and you're just like trying to get through boards, trying to pass your classes. And you hear these things that are just kind of wackadoodle in school, and then they just like, oh, okay, I have to do that. I have to see
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
I have to,
Yes.
charge this price. I have to take insurance. And one of the things, and so thank you for coming on today, but talking about these things is you don't have to do that. And it's not going to be the same for every person. And that's okay.
Totally. And I think just being really mindful, because I drank the Kool-Aid of like practice management groups when I was a student. And
Mm-hmm.
it got me to a great place in many ways, right? So I don't regret any of it, but it definitely made me single-minded, I would say, and not as open to other ways of practicing until all of a sudden I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good in my body. Like saying that script,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't me, and I should probably authentically be me. But it took confidence in who I was as a doctor to get there, to question some of that. Where in hindsight, it would have been kind of cool if I wasn't so, I don't know, just as a student, if I kind of was able to check in back then.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the most common questions that you get. So one of them, these I always get is myself as well, is what questions, like when you're hiring a potential associate, what do you normally
Yeah.
ask? What are the big questions that you want to ask these students?
Sure. Well, even before I would get on a phone call or a Zoom or anything with a potential student, be it peak internship or associate opportunity, I have, I guess, higher requirements than other doctors. I don't, is what I'm told. So I want to see a full resume and I want to see a cover letter. And then I also ask for their why they became a chiropractor. And I'm not judging their why whatsoever. I just want to see that they've spent the time figuring out their why or why they are a chiropractor. And so those three things I require before I'm even communicating with the doctor. But when I'm looking at the resume, I really do pay special attention to what extra things they did outside of academics. What technique clubs were they involved in? What conferences and seminars did they go to? What else were they engaging in? Because that shows me their level of motivation and their joy for learning and open-mindedness if they went to a bunch of different clubs, technique groups, all of that sort of stuff. And it just shows me like they probably really have a passion for chiropractic if they were doing more than what was required of them in chiropractic school, right? So that's something I pay really special attention to. And then once we get on the phone, I'm asking some basic like interview questions, I guess you could say, like, tell me about yourself. What got you into chiropractic? I want to go through your resume a little bit. Tell me about your internship. And I am paying special attention in that too, especially if I'm bringing them on as a doctor. I want to know, did they get much hands on? Right now, the schools, like since COVID, the schools, from what I'm hearing from the students I'm talking to, at least, it might not be all the schools, but is they aren't getting as much hands on. It's really challenging to meet their numbers and in some of these student clinics. And so I'm seeing, did they go outside the student clinic and try to, did they go maybe on a mission trip or somewhere they're going to get their hands on more patients, like, just underground adjusting, whatever it might be. I just want to know that, what type of experience they have there. And then I will ask, like, what was your favorite thing about so and so chiropractic, where they interned or maybe they'd worked or whatever that looks like on their resume. And I'm listening to see if they speak positively of the practice or negatively of the practice, a little bit between what they took away from it, asking them about any large tasks or campaigns that they've led in offices in the past or just in school. And that gives me a little bit more of an idea of leadership capacity for them, because as doctors, we do lead. We lead our community. And then I ask questions around like any way that they've gotten involved in the community, if they've done any marketing, networking, that sort of stuff, just to see if they've been like speaking about chiropractic. And I'll even set them up on a scenario. So our office is pediatric prenatal family wellness center, our offices. So I'll ask questions like, if you were at an event or a party and you heard someone saying that their child had ear infections, how would you respond? And I want to just see, like, is this even a thought in their mind that chiropractic can help with ear infections? Because quite frankly, I've had students from certain schools where they're like, they would have just said, you might need antibiotics, but don't take them for 3 days. Like they literally are in,
Wow.
I'm not kidding, yeah, I've had interesting responses to that before where I'm like, here's my lesson. I cannot assume that just because someone went to chiropractic school, that they have the same philosophy. Even if they went to philosophically sound, in my mind, what I would make assumptions about school, I can't assume that they have the same philosophy or that they practice like the chiropractic lifestyle just in general, because I've learned from interns in the past, like just having, I hope this doesn't sound one way or another. I don't want this to sound judgmental, but I had one who was like putting on Bath and Body Works lotion, taking Advil during shift when she had cramps. And, it's like, that's not, we really, focus on the 3 T's and prevention and chiropractic lifestyle. So for us, it's like, that's not normal for chiropractors to do that. Right. And
Well,
again,
yeah.
not trying to be judgmental. I'm really not, because I just assumed like we all got on that same page back in chiropractic school and drank Kool-Aid, right? I don't know.
It's crazy. But I mean, like, it's not quite as blatant, but it's like walking and smoking. You're like, well, that's not
Yeah,
going to
you're like,
work
I
here.
didn't think I needed to tell you that. Exactly. Isn't that funny? Bath and Body Works compared to smoking is
Well, yeah,
the
it's
level we're on these days.
yeah, but I
I'm
mean,
just
but
laughing
really,
at.
like, you're not even thinking, it's crazy. I'm not sure if you've been, and I'm sure you have been talking to some students in school. Like, I've gone to
Yeah.
like 2 schools, and it's wild. It's wild. Some of the students, what they say, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you ever even
Yeah.
think that? And it's kind of scary because you just never really know what's happening in these schools.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this goes for students too, is when you look at doctors, you might see them on stages or on Instagram, or their website looks amazing. And it can be the same thing where you think, oh my gosh, my experience is going to be like this. Like you dream up what it's going to be like. And really, once you get there, usually the curtain is pulled and you see what it looks like behind stage, right? And that's when I think you should do the best, like, time to just discern what is in alignment for you, and let go of like what you thought it might be. I think this is something that students should be aware of too, is when you're looking at a doctor, maybe on stage or on Instagram or their office website, however you are researching a doctor that you might go work with, or you're interested in being in that office, is just really keep in mind to use discernment, and that it might look different when you get to their office. So before you ever go and decide to move somewhere and sign a lease and live somewhere, because in our area, you have to sign a lease for a year on a house or an apartment.
Yeah,
I would
Colorado's
say
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? I'd say just do your due diligence. Like, make sure that you really know what it's like in that office, and that you've spent time really getting to know that doctor, the doctors that are in that office as well, to just have that settling feeling, knowing that you're going to the right place. Because I think that's where we see a lot of idealism. Is that how you'd say it? Like, from students who are just, dreaming up what it's going to be like in this office when they get there. And then they're highly disappointed when they see what it's actually like. And, and just keeping in mind, like, doctors on stage it's a different stage presence than what it's like working with them on the day to day. Sometimes I
Yeah.
learned that the hard way. I really learned that the hard way.
Oh
So,
yeah. I've heard a lot of stories like that. Like a lot,
yeah,
like my
yeah.
girlfriend has that story of her first internship or her first associateship. It was like one of these big, and not, I don't, obviously you can be a big person on stage and be a great office, but sometimes
Totally.
it doesn't match. And man, she just had the worst experience. But she
Yeah.
learned something,
Right.
right? Like,
I know. I think it's always coming back and being like, and I'll say, like, my docs in my office who didn't come straight from school, the ones who have been in other offices, have so much gratitude and appreciation for the way that we operate and the way that our docs are taken care of. And so for me as an owner, it's like, I'm sad that they had some of them really awful experiences in chiropractic. But at the same time, I'm like, gosh, it's like amazing having these doctors who are like, are you sure?
yeah,
Thank
can I
you so
actually,
much.
yeah, can I have one
Yeah.
day off? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's some horror stories out there. But, anyways, back to kind of questions that I ask. I like to just kind of go through these so that students have an idea and can kind of prepare. Because with Chiro Intensive, there's a lot of docs out there with these questions too, because these are some of the associate questions. It might be nice to just have an idea of what could be coming your way. But just a couple of other ones I'll ask is like, what are your top 3 strengths as a doctor? Or if they're a student, what do you anticipate your top 3 strengths as being? What 3 areas do you want to improve as a chiropractor? What's your biggest accomplishment? Why do you want to work here? That one can really throw people off,
Yeah.
because sometimes it will be students being like, I follow you guys on Instagram and you look like you have so much fun. And so it's kind of like looking for that surface level answer versus more in-depth answer. And also sometimes the answers can be very me focused for them. Like, I want to learn Webster. I want to learn how to see
Mm,
babies. I want you to teach me this. I want you to teach me that so that I can go open up my own office in 2 years. Like, they will straight up tell me all of that. And I love transparency with, if you're not going to be here, if you have plans for a certain period of time, thank you for letting me in on those plans, because I want to help you and support you on the next steps of your journey too. And it can be such a good mutual situation, even with a shorter term, like a 2 year, 3 year contract, where it's like when we're closer to 12 months out from them opening up their own office, I can be helping them on the business side of things with preparation, looking at their leases, trying to like be their advocate and be there for them. But then they can also help me with, okay, now I can get another associate in. You can help train that associate and we can have a seamless transition. So it doesn't need to be like people leaving on negative terms or being secretive, and it's
yeah.
honestly like really easy for me to see it. I'm sure for you too. So, I know who's going to go open up their own office. I know who's here to have babies and get maternity leaves in my office and then go on and do their own thing later. And I'm okay with that, but being secretive about it doesn't help anyone because it's still pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask questions too, like the takeaways from other clinics, things that you disliked from other clinics you've been in, techniques you regularly practice, because some people are really, really stuck on their technique. And if they are, or if you are, then make sure you're in an office practicing that technique. Expecting to go into someone else's office and practice your own skill set or tools that you have or technique isn't probably going to work out, honestly, because it throws off the consistency for the patients and results, and the doctor bringing on, the owner is probably wanting someone who can replicate results and technique in their office too. So I think just being cautious of that and having that conversation, if you are headstrong on your technique, finding that right place. Tell me about a time you've gone above and beyond for a patient. And that is also really, really telling to see kind of that tableside, bedside manner of
Mm.
doctors too. Tell me about a time you challenged the opinion of your boss or a colleague or coworker and how you got them to see your point of view. This is a big one. I can see people who are drama. I'll tell you that right there. If I get a dramatic story, I'm like, oh boy,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I think
Um,
transparency and honesty, like that's the kind of the theme that's running through all these questions. And
yes,
I think that
yeah,
they're
yep.
scared. A lot of times they're scared of like, oh no, I'm going to say this thing and they're not going to like it. Or they'll think, but it's actually the opposite, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. And I just say the only like big one is philosophically. I always make sure I ask where they stand philosophically with chiropractic. And that seems to like trip people up too, where they're just like overwhelmed about giving the right answer. And it's
Right.
like, all you need to say is above, down, inside out, like innate intelligence, the nervous system, like you got to give me a little bit that you're not neuromusculoskeletal pain doctor, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't need to know you read every green book, blue book. Like it's okay. It's fine. But like, I need to know that we're on the same page here and we can continue to grow from that. And then just long-term and short-term personal and professional goals are really important for me to ask and have an idea. And I will straight up ask, how long do you plan to stay with the company? Which of course that's not a set in stone answer, but at least then we can get, an idea together.
Yeah, I think that that's super important. Right now, my associate, we know her stop time, and we are working together right now because she's looking to buy a practice and go back home. We've always known that. So instead of it being like, "Ooh, I'm leaving," oh no, it's like, okay, you're leaving at this time. It's going to be great because the next associate's basically going to take on your whole practice. What a gift, And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna, help you navigate because I bought a practice, so I have that knowledge. And so it's, I'm happy to help her because she did so wonderful and was in the very beginning transparent and honest. So we could make a plan.
That's awesome. That really
So
is. That's like
definitely a
the
plan.
win-win. Yeah. Yep.
Well,
Yep. And I feel like we're seeing that more now these days, where it used to be, I don't know, just a different mindset with the way people handled that.
I hope so, because man, it's a problem in chiro. I'm not sure if you think this, but I think it's a problem. All students I hear, oh well, chiropractors eat their young, and I'm like, well, yes, there are some horror stories, and those are the ones that get passed around. But there are really great supportive positions, and I
Right.
know a lot of docs that want to create that. And I'm hoping
Yes.
that more and more docs are looking to create that, and that more and more students are feeling okay of taking on an internship at least, and an associateship, because I think that they all think they have to open their own practice. Like that's the only
Mm,
option to be happy. And I'm like, hey, if you don't have the right mindset for that, like you're gonna get eaten alive out there.
yep.
So
Yep. I agree.
how does the student or associate find or identify the best clinic for them? How do you think that they figure that out?
Yeah, I think that is kind of what we were talking about in the beginning is shadowing as much as possible and then finding mentors along the way that you align with and resonate with, and you should know, like innately check in with your body, and then starting to think of long term, starting to think, can I do I want to practice like this for however many years? And again, the answer it doesn't need to be the right answer right now, but you need to start thinking about that, you know? I think there's other things to look at too with practice, like the practice that you're going to is seeing if they have a personality practice, which what that means is that the doctor maybe is a solo doctor in practice, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And all of their patients are like, look up to them, and they might have their name in their practice. It might just be clearly focused around that doctor,
Yes.
because that can be a big challenge to come into an office like that, and you could always feel in a sense less than, and that's not good for your confidence as a doctor at all. So there might need to be some shifts in conversations you have with that owner that they just might not be aware of from the very beginning about that too. But I think going to as many conferences, groups, clubs, offices, and shadowing to start to see what aligns with you, and then looking for opportunities out in the profession. That I just think there's so many opportunities out there right now. Maybe it's just because that's what I see, but I don't know, like the amount of ads I see out hiring for docs right
Yeah.
now it seems to be more than the amount of doctors who are available.
Agree. I think that's a combination of a lot of practice. I think two things happened during COVID. People's practices either grew, like we actually got busier, or they went
Hmm.
under. So if they went under, then there's more people then to go to these offices that were growing. And the ones that grew are like, holy smokes, I need some help now. And I think that that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that the docs are, man, we're really busy. We need some help. But I agree with you. I think that I see ads everywhere, but I think it's good. I think that like, we need to shift away from this everyone needs to own their own practice right out of school. Yes, you can do that, to like, let's have a softer landing and then a
Yeah.
supportive environment where then if they do want to open your own practice, like what you were saying, like your second clinic, right? You had that with, you helped with
Yep.
your associate open that, right?
Yep, 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 exactly. Yeah, and I think even just what you were just mentioning, I think having that conversation with the clinic that you're going to, and whether this is peak internship or associateship, and mentioning that you're looking for a mentor, not just a boss, but also a mentor, because that is going to kind of check that doctor to realize, like, if they don't realize this already, that they need to invest in you. And so if you're a doctor listening to this who is looking to bring on associates in office, I think it's a mindset shift. If you're not just a boss, you are a mentor, and you are teaching, and you're downloading the years and training and skill sets and information that you have into the younger generation right now. And that is going to require time on your part outside of clinic hours to be working with, to be training, and to be mentoring these younger doctors too. So sometimes I think doctors, the owners will think, oh, once I get an associate in, then I can go on vacation, then I can relax a little bit. And it's like, you can, but it might be a disaster if that's the way that you do it.
It's
Like, you
more work in the
definitely,
beginning.
yes,
It's
yeah,
more
you
work.
know that.
Yes.
Yes, totally. But a lot of docs don't realize that it's like, it's actually going to be double work in a sense for you as far as like your investment goes. You just want to double down in the beginning. So, and have that seamless transition so that your practice members or patients are ready for that new doctor, that you don't just throw them into, so that you can have retention and longevity with that doctor and with practice members too. So there's a lot of things in the beginning that when they get missed really create a messy situation or resentment later on. And they're the simplest, smallest things like you and I are talking about right now.
Yeah. Well, I talked to, so my best friend actually hired my girlfriend, and they're actually doing great because she has systems in place and wants to have a supportive environment. But what I told her, I said, what an associate does is point out all your flaws. You're like, oh crap, I was doing that thing and I kind of just like let it slide. And like you said, there's small things. So for me, like one of the big things is I'm not great at getting my notes done on time or checking my people through. And I try to get better at it. And what I notice is my associate has the same bad habits that I do. Why? Because I didn't fix it. And I was like, God dang it. So like, that's what it just amplifies everything that your systems, but it's actually great because it allows you to fix all those little holes that you have
Totally.
that you didn't know that you had. But that's what an associate does immediately. It just like, oh, these are the things that I didn't kind of get sharpened or fixed right away. So it is more work in the beginning, fixing all those things.
Yes, yes. And creating systems where maybe you didn't have systems before. But I think this is a moment for owners to step into the next level of leadership. And if you do realize these holes, or an associate, one of your docs points something out to you, that you don't get defensive, and that you sit with it for a moment, and you're not reactive, and you realize, oh yeah, I should create a system around that, because sometimes I think docs coming in, like associates coming in, are too a lot of them are scared of the owner. Like that's what I will hear, because owners can like flip out and react, like be very reactive and emotional and take things personally. And I like, that is something I think maturity wise, like if you're hiring on other doctors into your office, you gotta get your personal crap together, do the work, whatever that is, therapy, inner child work, whatever it is, so that you don't burn out an associate, you don't react, because once you react a certain way, there's really no coming back from that, right? They're not going to forget that. They're going to be scared to ever come back to you and ask you a question or mention anything. And then you're going to be living in this environment, working in this environment together of awkwardness or unspoken words for however long that lasts.
My first associate, I was pretty young when I hired my first associate, and I did so many things wrong. And I look back on that and be like, wow, like that was probably not the best environment. I could have done so much better, but just like reflecting on that. And at that time I had some personal issues in my life. And I'm not sure if you listen to Sean Dill or Lacey Book, but their biggest thing is business problems are personal problems in disguise. And that's what it was in there. It was like my personal problems were coming through. I was reactive, and, I just didn't get the most potential of that associate because of my own baggage that I brought to the office.
Yeah. And we all learn. I mean, we're all going to learn from that first doc. So if you're the doc going into an office that hasn't had an associate, I think just awareness around that is helpful, and like being patient with that doctor is important, but being a part of that learning process too, and realizing you have leadership in that as well, as and are able to help make change in this office. Being that first associate is a positive and honoring thing too.
Definitely. Well, when you're still in school, I think there's things that you can do. So what would you say are the best tips for students that are, I think like eighth quarter, kind of around the time you can really start thinking about what's going to be when you get into practice?
Yeah. So besides the things we've mentioned already, and definitely getting your hands on as many people as possible, I would say some good books to kind of prepare you. A big thing is that mindset shift. So getting your mind into a place where maybe you're working on limiting beliefs that you could pull with from school to your career, which is naturally going to happen anyways. But there's some great books that I would recommend. The Big Leap is a great one.
That.
Yeah, isn't it great? Like that's looking at your upper limit problems, and it does look more into some inner child stuff too, in a sense of like those beliefs that you might be bringing with you, and how to retrain the neurology behind that too, and your thought processes. I read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and I've read it so many times. I read it quite a few times as a student. The only thing I don't love is it's old school. Like, I wish there was there is technically a more modern version, but it still doesn't feel modern. But I think that's really important for communication skills with patients or practice members in the future. And then Think and Grow Rich, I think, is a staple just for more of that abundance mindset too. There's like Little Money Bible. There's other ones that you can bring in for the abundance side of things, or even just like a simple, if you're into more of like I don't know what this category would be called, but like You Are a Badass, You're a Badass financial edition. Like those are really simple feminine reads, I would say, that won't stress you out, at least. So those are some easy ones as a student too, that can at least get some more of that manifestation going on for you. What would you say? What are your favorite ones that you
Well,
recommend
so
students?
all of those are on my associate reading list, which is fun. The thing about, winning friends, I think that what happens to young docs is they want to show people how smart they are. And
Hmm.
that actually, you'll just talk someone out of care. What you really want to do is make them like you, which sounds very superficial, but like you want to listen to them. You want to be interested in who they are. So I love that book. It's very simple. It's like super simple
Yes.
stuff that you're like in your head, you're reading, you're like, duh, of course I'll do that. But then if you think about those principles and you're going and talking to somebody, you're like, oh crap, I don't do that. I just talk over them and I just use big doctor words and I try to make them think I'm super smart. And, the one thing
Hmm.
that I try to talk to my new associates is like half the time, you shouldn't use any words that have more than two syllables. Like stop doing
Hmm.
that. You just need to be a normal person. And then they trust you. Once they trust
Hmm.
you, then they're going to want to come in and they like you and they bring their friends in. Because
That's great.
because I think that chiropractors also suffer a little bit from their, they can be insecure because chiropractic is tough, man. You get out there and people
Yeah.
say, stuff that's not nice to you. And you have to just kind of be like, yeah, I don't care. But
Right.
sometimes if you get your ego bruised a little bit, you're like, well, no, let me tell you about the neurology and I'm so smart. And that you really don't do anything. It's like arguing with somebody that has a different political view than you. You just come at them with like quote unquote facts. They're just going to hold on to that, whatever they
Yeah.
are more. And that's what chiropractors do. So I love that those books that you're talking about, Little Money Bible, love that book. There's all kinds of different books. With that and changing your mindset, I would say The Happiness Advantage is a book that I really like
Yes. Yep.
because if you don't know what makes you happy, no matter you get into the best associateship, you get into the best, place you want to live. If you are thinking, oh, when I get this, I will be happy, it's never going to happen. If you're happy
Yeah.
first, then all these things that you're doing and preparing yourself, it's going to amplify your happiness and your success. So I would say I love the books that you recommend, and The Happiness Advantage is another book that I really like early on for students to read.
Yeah. That's such a great point too. That really is. And that just goes with everything in life. Like so many people are seeking, like, once I have a relationship, once I
Mhm.
have my degree, once I XYZ, then I'll be happy. And you're spot on with that. That's great advice. I love that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about my two favorite questions I like to ask every single guest. And so that is, what was your worst business decision that you ever made? And then what is the best business decision that you've ever made?
Okay, worst business decision is ridiculous. It's so stupid, but it's like, so back in the day, I opened up my office with my husband, who's not a chiropractor. So he was my CA for like a fraction of a time. Thank God. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being. He's an Enneagram 7. So if you know that, it means like rainbows and unicorns and life is great. So very likable, very fun, whatever.
What is
Didn't
yours?
I'm a 3, so I'm an achiever, right? So, but he's running my front end right when we open. And so, like, he's the type who's like, oh, we'll set your payments up on your care plan next time. No worries, no worries. Like, oh, don't worry, just pop in. You don't have to schedule. Like, just like, wait, like, it's awful, awful, awful if you look back at the books back then. So, anyways, solicitors, as you know, just walk into your office, right? Like, try to sell you anything.
Yes.
So the one that we signed on was a printer. And it's the stupidest thing, but it's like this laser printer and you get on a lease and then you pay $1 and you own it. Well, it all sounded great. And my husband did all the talking and he explained it to me and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. That'll make our life easier. They come and give you new ink, refill it once a month, whatever. I probably spent about $20,000 on this
What?
$600 printer over 5 years. And then I get out of it, right? I'm like, finally, this thing is up. I know this is ridiculous. So it's like kind of just embarrassing, but I bring it up because it can be something that seems small, a freaking printer. And $20,000 later, you're like, I could have gotten 4 chiro tables for that amount,
Yeah.
back then in 2012. So yeah, it was, even when I tried to get out of the lease, they were like, oh, well, you actually needed to give us a 6-month notice. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is it. This is it. They're like, it auto resigns. I'm like, no, I will, turn you into the BBB. Like, I am done. I paid my 5 years. This is the worst business decision I ever made. So
Well, I
I know
think
it's
it
kind
just
of ridiculous,
no,
but
I love it. I love it because, when you're new in practice, there's so many things coming at you at once, right? It's just, and it's sometimes you're just like, sure, we'll do that. Like, you just like, I don't want to look at it.
yeah,
We'll just do it. And that is always where you get in trouble. So I don't care what it is. I think that all of these I've asked, I love to hear them because it's always very early in practice. Almost everyone,
yeah,
it's like the first year, second year in practice. And it's always something where it's like, I don't want to look at this. Someone else do it for me. And I don't really know what's happening, but whatever. And that's where you get in trouble.
yeah. That's a good point. That's a great
So
point. So that was
yeah.
definitely like just, and then best I would say is growing to have a team of chiropractors. I did really, really, really well by the numbers, you could say, financially, patient visits, all of that, when I was by myself. And I actually didn't have a coach the first year and I skyrocketed. But I didn't realize at the time that it was lonely. And I've always
Mhm.
been, I was a 3 sport athlete. I was captain of my sports back in high school, and I was always on team sports. And so I didn't realize how much I really thrive with a team and a team of other doctors that you can, just like support each other and seek each other out, whether it is like for a clinical opinion or if it's just like, man, this patient really took it, like I'm taking it hard after I just went through
Mhm.
this with a patient, like, or like I'm personally going through something like my first, I don't know, it was probably a year. I don't know when it was. It was right in the beginning, the first year in practice. I want to say like 6 months in, I actually miscarried,
Oh.
and I miscarried in the middle of shift, and
Oh
I
my
went to the.
God.
I've actually never told this story like anything out there, but I was seeing patients. I'm the only doctor, and I go to the bathroom, and I'm like, shit, like I know what's happening right now. And I just had to keep, I didn't have to, but I thought I had to because I was a hustle
Yeah.
mindset back then. That's who I was back then.
Well, you think
Like
you're not
I
allowed to have
prioritize
feelings.
exactly. I
You're
exactly.
not allowed to have feelings.
I
You're not allowed to have personal life. I think that
yeah.
that's this
Yep.
myth that we take on. You just, oh, you show up and you're like, everything's fine. And you don't allow yourself
Yeah.
to be like, everything's not fine.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And you just, back then I would have prioritized my patients and my business over me any
Hmm.
day. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what I did. I kept seeing patients while I was miscarrying, and it was god awful pain.
Wow.
I just like curled up in a ball after the last one. It was, I mean, it was obviously heartbreaking too, but then like I don't even know how I did it pain wise at the time. And I look back on that moment and I'm like, now even not even the same thing, but where doctors are going, if they're going through something, if they get, like bad news in the middle of shift, which you really, shouldn't be checking your phone and that sort of stuff. But if something shows up
Hmm.
right before whatever, like we can tap each other in and out. We can be like, hey, like I'm not my best right now and I should not be putting my hands on someone. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's just, it's having a team, I'd say, is the best decision for me overall and for all of us. And it's a lot more fun, and it's there to support you through unexpected things that could be coming your way as a doctor that I don't even know how you prepare for. You don't prepare for that stuff to happen in the middle of a shift, you
No,
know?
well, yeah, first of all, I appreciate you even sharing that. And I'm sure there's other docs that have
Yeah.
had similar situation, but I think that allowing your associates to be human, we had an incident in our office where this guy like flipped out on Colby and she was by herself and she was super scared. And so we kind of been dealing with this for the past 6 months. And then I was there and he showed up and, it took, I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and I've boxed my whole life. And so it took everything in me
Ooh.
to not like take this guy and like,
Yeah.
and like, have him exit the office. But, I was like, Colby, go in the other room. Like, I will deal with this. And then when finally it was over, it was like, you can go home. Like, it's okay. Because
Mhm.
what kind of care are you going to give after a situation like that? It's probably not going to be
Right.
great, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
think that we definitely, as doctors, think that we're not allowed to be human. We're not allowed to have feelings. We're not allowed to, it's always like about them and, everything's fine. Why would anything ever go bad? And I think that I can remember one time ever in practice that I showed emotion and it like freaked my patients out because I don't
Mm,
ever show emotion,
mhm.
And I was kind of like, this was a time where I was by myself. And so it was hard. So yeah, I love what you're saying. And I also thrive on team sports. I played college basketball, and I actually, when someone has played team sports, like you're talking about questions to ask or things on the resume, man, that's number one, because they want to be part of a team. And I think that it's just super helpful. And another chiropractor is going to understand things better, because, like people can be crazy too. And then if you're by yourself, you can kind of dwell on it. But if someone else is there, it's like funny. Oh, that person was hilarious. Like they're just crazy.
Right.
And you just kind of shrug it off.
Or just someone who at least your girlfriend's a chiropractor, so you can go home and and she's going to understand. Yeah. Good and bad for sure. But for me, it's I would just go tell my husband he doesn't have that relatability or understanding. So when you have those other chiros in the office, and you can just like you said, laugh it off together, or be like, oh shoot, that would have been really hard. They've maybe been there before too. And it's just nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, we're getting kind of into our podcast here, but I did want you to take some time and talk about your doctoring training. Speaking of helping doctors hire associates, you want to tell people a little bit about that before we get out?
Sure. Yes. So I have a free mini training. It's 42 minutes, and I think you can put the link in show notes, right? Is that probably the easiest way?
What I'm going to do is go ahead and describe it. I'm going to put the QR code in when we publish it, so people can just scan it, go right to where it is.
Okay, no worries. So it's a free mini training, and it's 42 minutes long, and it's really for docs who are, or new docs, I would say, or students who are starting to see patients, or the owner doc can watch this and use this training for docs who are coming into their office, new docs coming in their office. And it goes through different concepts that are really helpful for you as a doctor, especially through communication. So the concepts are foresighting, permission, basically how to ask permission of patients, authoritative speaking, effective digging, active listening, which is so important, especially when you're taking a history with a practice member, metaphors and proverbs, sticky values that you have in the office or that you go back to, role fluidity, and then rituals. So rituals would be, there's simple ones like the beginning of a patient's visit, like a typical patient visit, not a new patient. What's that ritual that's exactly the same? Like maybe hand placement. That's the same between all doctors in your office. And then how do you end an adjustment or a visit or a check? What does that look like? And how do you have that consistency in that ritual for the practice member or patient, so that no matter which doctor they see, they have that ritual of this is the beginning and this is the end. So this training goes through those concepts.
That's so great. And I know that docs need help with that. So I appreciate you doing classes like that, and they can check it out for free. And I'm sure there's other things that you do. And I really appreciate you coming on today. We went a little longer than normal, but I thought we just had a really great conversation today. So I just love that.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for having me too.
Oh, you're very welcome. Guys, if you want to know more about Dr. Elise's stuff, please reach out to her. She's very accessible, and listen to our podcast. It's the first Monday and third Monday, and appreciate you guys being on, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.